I felt at the moment I stepped outside, something was wrong. At first it was subtle, barely noticeable. The soles of my shoes didn't press into the pavement the way they usually did. My feet touched the ground, sure, but it was like walking on a trampoline that had just enough give to make you second guess each step. The wind brushed past me harder than usual, and my hoodie fluttered like it was desperate to escape my body. I thought I was dizzy, maybe low blood sugar, but then I saw the squirrel. It was climbing a tree. Nothing unusual until it let go mid-jump, and instead of dropping onto the next branch, it just hovered, like it forgot how to fall. It drifted in a slow arc before softly landing on the bark. My heart jumped into my throat. I blinked, looked around, but no one else was outside, just me and that squirrel. I laughed nervously, told myself I imagined it, but I couldn't ignore it anymore when I picked up my coffee cup, and it felt like a balloon. That ceramic mug, normally weighty, was nearly floating on its own. I let go of it just for a second, and it didn't crash to the ground. It floated, tilted slightly, then fell in slow motion, like someone had pressed pause on reality. That's when panic started creeping in. Something was wrong with gravity. And then I noticed my arms. My legs, they felt lighter. Not in the good way after a workout. Not like I lost weight. More like I wasn't tethered anymore. Like the strings that tied me to the earth were fraying. I jumped just to test a theory and instantly regretted it. I didn't come down right away. It was the kind of sensation you'd think would feel magical, like flying in a dream. But it wasn't. It was terrifying. My feet dangled midair for a full second, before gravity reluctantly pulled me back down. But even then, it wasn't a fall. It was a gentle return, like gravity was no longer sure of its job. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding, and opened the news. The headline screamed back at me. Global gravity anomaly. Earth's gravitational force weakening. Scientists baffled. It wasn't just me, it was everywhere. I scrolled through shaky footage of people leaping and not landing, of cars drifting ever so slightly uphill, of lakes with ripples that never quite settled. The Earth's gravitational pull had dropped by 20%. 20%. That doesn't sound like a lot until you live it. Everything depends on gravity. Our bodies are calibrated to it. Our muscles, our blood pressure, our balance. The moment that pull weakens, everything shifts. Air pressure thins. Objects fall slower. People jump higher but not always land in the same place. And the weirdest thing, it didn't feel like the world was falling apart. It felt like it was floating apart gently and visibly. I watched my neighbor's trampoline flip over and hover in place. A bird flew overhead, except it wasn't flying. It was coasting, wings still, riding the thin air like a leaf. That's when it started to get dangerous. The wind picked up, stronger than before. Normally we can brace against it, but not now. Not when our bodies weigh less. I watched a garbage can roll down the street, hit a bump, and lift off. I backed into my doorway, clutching the frame, because my feet were starting to lift, too. My center of gravity felt off, wrong. Like I was inside a planet-sized carnival ride that had just lost power mid-spin. I tried to go inside, but I wasn't the only one panicking. Birds smashed into windows. They couldn't control their flight paths. Trees swayed violently, shedding leaves and branches that floated longer than they should. Then I saw my cat. She had slipped out sometime during the chaos and was now huddled under a car, meowing like her life depended on it. I ran, if you can call it that. Each step felt like a moonwalk, like the air resisted me, and the ground wasn't sure it wanted me back. I grabbed her just as the wind lifted a patio umbrella from a backyard and sent it tumbling down the street like a giant dandelion seed. Back inside, I taped the windows, anchored the furniture, tied myself to the couch with an old extension cord just in case. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. I wasn't scared of flying, I was scared of drifting, of being untethered. There's something primal in us that knows. When gravity fails, everything else will follow. Night came, but sleep didn't. The news said gravity was still weakening, slowly but steadily. Another 5% drop. Satellites had started falling out of sync. Tides were rising in strange places. The moon's orbit was subtly shifting. They explained it's something about core instability, planetary mass fluctuations, maybe even dark matter interference, but it didn't matter. All I knew was this: we were slipping. The next morning I woke to a strange sound sighting. No traffic, no footsteps, no bird. I looked outside and saw people just floating, gently, aimlessly. Some had tied themselves down, others held onto ropes connected to trees or fences, but a few hadn't. I saw a man several feet above his rooftop, clutching an antenna, legs swinging like a broken pendulum. We were becoming balloons. Even breathing felt strange. The air pressure had dropped. My chest had to work harder to draw in oxygen. Gravity doesn't just keep us on the ground, it keeps our atmosphere dense and breathable. Without it, everything starts thinning out, including the air in my lungs. By day 3, birds stopped flying. They couldn't navigate in a world with inconsistent gravity. Airplanes were grounded not because they couldn't fly, but because they couldn't land. Water no longer flowed properly. Rivers looked like they were stuck in slow motion. The ocean tides bulged unnaturally toward the moon, which now loomed slightly larger in the sky. And then came the moment I'll never forget. I was walking across my living room very slowly, very carefully when the wind outside howled, the pressure inside dropped, and I felt my feet lift off the ground. No jump, no run, just release. I grabbed the curtain rod in sheer panic, my body horizontal now, parallel to the ceiling. My heart raced, my muscles screamed. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be one of the people floating away. I could feel the air slipping through my fingers, my grip weakening. I screamed for no one, for gravity, for earth, for anything that would pull me back. And then by some miracle I crashed to the floor. A sudden gravitational pulse, they said, some core rebalancing. Temporary, but enough to ground me again. My legs buckled. I sobbed, not out of pain, but relief. Because I realized something we all forget. Gravity isn't just a force. It's home. It holds us close. It tells us we belong here. I don't know if it's coming back fully. Scientists are hopeful, but I've learned one thing in all of this. You never truly appreciate the ground beneath your feet until the day it lets go, and you start to float away.